Welcome to the Curious Empath. This is a space for those of us who feel it all. The beauty, the ache, the currents beneath the surface of things. Together we wander through the deep places. Intuition, spirit, healing, psychology, and neurodivergence, along with all the tender mysteries we don't yet have language for. I'm Quiring, a mental health counselor and a curious empath, and I follow that curiosity wherever it leads us. Come curious, leave changed. Let's get started. Welcome to the Curious Empath. I'm your host, Quiring, and today I have with me Demi Pietchell. Demi founded the Starfire Codes, which is an investigative metaphysics publication where rigorous research collides with the strange, consciousness, suppressed science, and the patterns underlying history and headlines. Too weird for skeptics, too rational for mystics. She holds a BFA from New York University's Film Television Program and an MPS from the Interactive Telecommunications Program, or ITP. She spent years in the entertainment and marketing industries and now works as a certified Monroe Institute outreach trainer, life coach, professional diviner, and contributing writer at the Advocates for Self-Government. She teaches workshops in consciousness exploration, manifestation, and out-of-body technique, and reads tarot for clients worldwide. Welcome, Demi, and we're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Everything in your bio, I'm like, well, we can just talk about that the whole time, but I do have some topics and questions here. I'm curious, even before we get to those, what is your definition of divination, or like umbrella of what comes under divination?
Sure. Well, any tool that we use in order to sort of take a snapshot of the energies, and you could do it with anything. I mean, even in my readings, I use runes, I use tarot cards, I use numerology, but I also use shufflemancy, which is putting songs on shuffle and seeing what different songs come up, and then kind of reading into the lyrics and seeing what I find there that suits the rest of the reading. As long as you set the intention of what you are trying to get back out of that information, it'll come to you. I've had a system where I've pulled songs early on, and I made the intention that I would have those songs fit the readings that I was doing as I was doing them for the collective readings on Substack. And sure enough, it's a 1-for-1. So between the shuffles, pulling the runes, pulling the tarot cards, and then seeing where all of those energies fit, all of those things are done separately, and they all kind of come together. And as long as you're setting that intention, they will. They absolutely will. It's been mind-boggling the way that they fit together.
It's so amazing. It's like, as you get further along in your spiritual journey, or certain pieces of it, I've heard like the synchronicities happen more and more frequently. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're describing, is like bringing all of those together and you see the interconnections. I was curious if it feels like it's reading the subconscious, mirroring where you're at, reading the energies. How else would you describe that? Those are ways I've thought about it.
When I set the intention, it's to take a snapshot of the energy and then present to people the different ways that they can look at that energy in order to optimize what's happening with the energies right then. I would never say anything that would take away from the person's agency in having an effect on what the outcome will be, because I don't believe in that. I believe that we all have agency, we all have free will over where we end up. So really what I'm doing when I take that snapshot of that energy is to find ways to optimize for the questions that the person's asking, or in the case of a collective reading, optimize for the energies in the collective so that you know where the energies are right now and you can best utilize those energies moving forward to do what you need to do, to see what you need to see, to make the choices that would best fit your own soul's blueprint. So whether that happens to be something that is coming from your subconscious when you take in that information and it's reflecting that back out, or it's something that's coming from divining that, or from some sort of communion with the universe, I think it's really a combination of all of these things. And you can choose which way to look at it. I mean, I'm not really locked into like any specific way of looking at it. I see the validity of all of those, and the validity in viewing it in all of those different ways. Like some of this is coming from the inside, some of it's coming from the outside. A lot of what's happening inside, I'm impacting and affecting the outside by setting up my energy. Yeah, there's so many different ways to look at that and so many different ways to play around with those energies and see what manifests for you. And I would never remove somebody's feelings of how they best impact that because everyone has their own way of going about that.
Right. I'm curious how you chose the divination tools that you use, like for your readings that you do really often. Like you mentioned shufflemancy, and I had never heard of that until I did a reading with you. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. I'm curious if you have been just working with a variety of tools over the time and oh, these are the ones that kind of speak to me, or how that came about and the ones that you've chosen to work with the
For
most
sure,
often.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and over time, it's how it happens. So initially my mother had tarot decks and I would play with them as a kid, so like I was exposed to them that way. I was exposed to all kinds of metaphysical books that she had around the house and things like that. I would try to debunk her and she would buy even more books and put them in front of me. And then eventually when my understanding of that needed, I already had all of the information in my head. So
Mhm.
that was interesting too. Part of my ethnic background is that I'm Scandinavian. My family was
Mhm.
from born home for 1,000 years, so I
Oh.
got into runes that way. I also the way that I take in information from my guides is through clairaudience, and a lot of the time it's through songs. And
Mm.
even as a kid, I could hear a couple notes of a song. As a little baby, I could tell you who sang the song and what
Oh.
album it came from and all of that. So I was always highly connected to music. It just became the things that spoke to me ended up as a part of this quilt that's stitched together that forms my readings.
Oh, I love that. And I love that description of it as a quilt. That's beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, and a lot of the time, like that's why I end up writing it down. Because even if I do a live reading with somebody, I will sit in their energy before we even start, and I'll pull
Mhm.
songs for them so that they still have the songs too. Because while you're doing a live reading, it's harder to do that because the songs take time, right?
Right.
So I'll pull those ahead of time for them, just sitting in their energy before
Mm.
we start so that they still get songs too.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of the time why I do it as a written form so that I have
Mm.
time to pull all of those different bits and pieces together and then deliver it in a PDF.
Okay. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was one of my questions was how you chose to do readings and give them in a written form versus a live reading and why one worked for you better than another. So it sounds like the
Oh,
shufflemancy is the main reason.
yeah, just because
Yeah.
it takes more time, but I do that too. So if I know that I'm doing a live reading, I'll just pull them ahead of time for the
Right.
person and have it ready to go, and I'll have it
Yeah.
in my notes for them. So
Yeah. I don't know if this is something you can describe or not, but how do you connect into someone's energy when they're not with you? And or then how do you tune into the collective energies? I'm curious what that feels like for you or what that process is like for you.
sure. I set the intention to do it, especially if I'm going to sit down and do a
Mm,
collective reading. I'll set the intention for that. I may meditate ahead of time, or I may just jump in and see where the songs are bringing me first, where
mhm,
that overall energy is, and then I'll pull a rune. And then from there, the rune will give me the overall vibe of the read. And then I'm looking at the cards, the numbers, and then bringing that in if there are questions. If it's a collective read, I don't have questions. So I just go
mhm,
by what the overall energy is. But different things come in different ways all the time. It could be that I'm sitting there and I start to have this song that's needling and
mhm,
I'm wondering, okay, wait, what is this? And I'll pull up the lyrics to it and it'll relate back to something that I know either goes with a certain person or I
mhm.
know that it's for the collective or I know it's for me. And I've gotten to a point where now I can tell which. But when I first started out doing it, it was very hard to tell which energy was coming through and who it belonged to. And
Yeah.
that was one of the main things. This is a funny story. I was in a chat and I'm talking to a lot of my friends who are in a group chat. I'm like, I feel this energy coming through. I'm
Mhm.
explaining the energy. It's really chaotic. It's upset. I don't know who it's coming from. And I'm explaining the whole thing to them. And they're like, no, it's none of us. And like, are you sure? Because I'm sitting here with you. There's a knock at the door. And it's one of my best friends who just came over to the house. And sure enough, she's in this same energy that I'm describing. I'm like, you guys aren't going to
Right.
believe this. So I didn't know, and I had no way of
Right.
knowing. She didn't tell me that she was coming. She just came.
Right.
So, it's just, I can feel it, and I don't always
Mhm.
know who to attribute it to. I have to
Right.
ask questions.
Right.
Eventually, I figure it out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
How do you? turn the like dimmer switch down on that or like protect your awareness of that when you need a break from it?
I made a decision to leave it on all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
I kind of did the opposite of that and just figured out how to live with it. And
Yeah.
at first, that was really difficult. And if you have a time constraint and you need to be doing something else,
Right.
it'll start needling its way in and you won't be able to get those
Hmm.
other things done. Like
Right.
you might be in the shower and you start hearing like clairaudience and
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
or you're trying to write something and something else is coming through and you have to switch gears really quick. I don't want to miss anything if it's supposed
Right.
to be coming in for me.
What is that like for you to be a channel in this world in a sense, right? Of being receptive to all of those messages and energies and bringing them into the world.
At first, it was super confusing because I was still trying to
Hmm.
figure out what was happening, what was going on. But after a while, it just became second nature, kind of commonplace for me that within certain conversations it would come through. The harder part was to know if the other person would be receptive to
Right.
hearing that or not. And I just kind of leave it up to, some people I know off the bat, they're going to be receptive. They always have been,
Mhm.
and it's fine to tell them. And the rest of the time I have to kind of feel it out and
Yeah.
see if that's going to be okay. And if it's not, I
Yeah.
just kind of keep it to myself.
All right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I read on one of your Substacks about truth vibrating at a specific frequency, and it
Yeah.
gave me chills. That was just such a helpful way to understand that. I guess I've thought about it as a resonance or tuning fork kind of feeling, which is basically the same thing you're saying, right? But I'm just wondering if you would expand on that a little bit or tell us a little bit more about that because I find that so helpful.
Sure. And even the fact that it's resonating with you to the point where it's giving you chills, that's a version of that. That's
Yeah.
you can feel it inside of you even when that
Yes.
happens. So it goes back to different layers of things like in history is really what I was looking at in that
Mm.
article. And there's the archaeology layer where we were talking about the oracle chamber at Hal Saflieni it was in Malta and it's carved from solid limestone. It was about
Mm.
5,000 years ago and it had a precision that produces a resonance that's at about 110 hertz, I want to say. The researchers at University of Salford measured that. And
Mm.
then UCLA neuroscientist Ian Cook measured 110 hertz and saw what it does to the brain and it alters the right hemisphere activity in the areas that are tied to mood regulation and social bonding, expanded perception. And then it was a pattern that emerged among different researchers and that number kept coming up over and over again 110 hertz. So the acoustic archaeologist Aaron Watson found the same number and he was studying sound engineering at Stonehenge.
Mm.
And then the same came up at Orkney Long Barrows and in Peru it came up. These were cultures that have no documented contact. We don't know that for sure, that they were never in
Mhm.
contact with each other. Um, all of these same cultures were developing against that same target frequency and
Wow.
built these permanent stone structures to deliver that frequency so that when people
Right.
were in those chambers, they would experience that. So it's similar to what we experience when we experience hemisync and binaural beats. There will be different resonances that are coming in. So let's say you've got 100 hertz here
Mhm.
and 104 hertz here. The brain will make 4 hertz in the
Mm.
center, and then you'll have hemispheric synchronization from that.
Oh, wow.
So in geophysics, we have the Schumann resonance, and we have the electromagnetic cavity that's between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere, and it hums at roughly, I think it's 7.83 hertz.
Mm.
So that frequency is in the range of human theta and low
Hmm.
alpha brainwaves. So that's the state in between sleeping and waking. That's the state that you can manifest from best. That's the state that you
Oh,
get into with meditation, with lucid dreaming,
right. Hmm.
with some channeling, not all channeling. Some channeling happens in gamma if it's really high frequency
Oh, okay.
channeling. But yeah, most of those, bridge crossing states are alpha bridge to theta. And and that's what we're trying to get to when we use these different technologies. Some people were trained to do that without it. And they, different traditions of monks and things like this that would like get into meditative states,
Right.
they were training their brains to do that without it, but the sound can get you there faster. So some people train for 20, 30 years to do this, and the sound will put you right there immediately.
Right. Yeah, it's so fascinating. In my research, I was looking at different neurodiversities and what frequencies they operate at the most easily. So I know our task orientation is in beta waves, and
Ah,
ADHD brains are often in theta and a little bit of beta, I believe. And autistic brains are in alpha and a little bit of gamma, which I thought was really interesting. I know for myself, I'm ADHD and I do really well in theta, but I also really love being in that meditative channeling state and like I really therapeutic modalities like IFS that help me get there or hypnosis or things like that, that I can be in that theta space. And it's really jarring now to have to be in beta for very long because I'm not used to having to do so many like administrative
oh.
tasks for that long.
Yeah, a lot of the time when these different sets of frequencies are composed, like let's say with hemisync or with most recently Monroe Sound Science, there will be frequency layering that happens that's not all within one frequency. So when we talk about it happening, it's usually just an example of the way that your brain deals with it.
Mm-hmm,
But they're
hmm.
layering these things so that in Monroe Sound Science, for example, you would have gamma added to it, which does not
Mm.
come in as a binaural beat. It's higher than that, so it won't produce a binaural beat if you try to like go that high with it. It won't happen, but it will keep you more awake. It keeps you from what we call clicking out. So
Mhm.
clicking out would be not having a sense of having been consciously aware of what's going on, but the lapse of time is there without having fallen to sleep.
Right.
So you come in and out of consciousness, you flow in and out of consciousness, you're aware that time has passed, but you weren't aware of what was going on in between. And gamma helps to keep that from happening.
Oh, that's so cool.
So it's layered. So you may be experiencing some percentage of theta, some percentage of beta, some percentage of gamma all across the board. And each of those have a different state that it's connected to, like focus, concentration, creativity, out of body experiences, being in a state outside of time, which would be focus 15. That's what we call that, where you have a sense of not being within time. Focus 12 is expanded awareness. Focus 10 would be your mind is awake, but your body's asleep. So we
Mm.
have all of these different focus levels that have all of these different blends of tones and sounds and things like that get you to that state.
Cool. Is there a way to access these or experiment with them or exper
Absolutely. I teach workshops that show you that. I have a few coming up. One, actually, two of them are exploring consciousness workshops, which are September 5th to the 7th, the first 2 days of Gateway Voyage, which is you
Mm.
explore Focus 10, which, I was just saying is your mind is awake, but your body's asleep. And the second day you explore Focus 12, which is expanded awareness and the different things that you can do within those states. So, for example, in Focus 12, we have this great problem solving technique, or we have like different ways that you can release things that you've been holding on to, that you can set an intention to release different things that you've been holding on to, and you get different symbolic imagery that comes along with that, and you're able to release that. Or some people actually they don't even experience imagery when they're
Mm.
in it, like they have there's something called aphantasia where you don't
Right.
necessarily, yeah, so they experience everything, in other sensory ways that don't involve vision oriented kinds of ways of experiencing those focus levels.
Right.
So that's really interesting too to hear about their accounts of what they experience, whether it's tactile or heat, cold, audio. They could have
Right.
maybe sensing colors and lights and things like that. all different smell, taste,
Right,
like they'll
right.
have it come through in
Yeah.
all different kinds of ways. And it's always really interesting to hear like their accounts of what they experience in those states.
Yeah. Do you know anything about if psychedelic drugs like help get the brain to any of these frequencies? It wouldn't be the same kind of like sound science or sound bringing it, but I was just connecting that and wondering because what you're describing sounds so similar to a psychedelic experience in some sense, right? That level of consciousness and that kind of processing as well. And so I'm curious how those are connected or not connected. What's similar or different? Do you know?
Yeah, the sound science is a way of doing that without taking any sort of, ethnogen or
Substance.
anything.
Right.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do change your brainwave states and in measured ways, and it depends which one and how
Right.
much and
Right.
which state you end up in. And this is separate from that, but it does have like a similar effect where you can have states like that for a brief amount of time and
Hmm.
then come back from it without having taken anything. Originally, Monroe was trying to develop sound learning,
Okay.
which would be like when you're asleep, he would have sounds that would come through and help you to learn, but he had to figure out a way to play those sounds for you while
Mm,
you're sleeping that you would
right.
still acknowledge. So he started doing work on that. And that was when he had his first out of body experience. So
Wow.
he was a television producer and a radio producer. He wasn't a mystic or anything
Right.
like that. He ended up doing this research because he had to figure out what was going on with himself.
Yeah. That's
He had an
fascinating.
issue he had to solve. So,
Right. Fascinating.
so his first experience was he ended up he looked to his side. He had been sleeping and he looks to his side and he sees this fountain coming out. And then he realizes that's the chandelier on his ceiling and he's next to it. And he looks
Mm,
down into his bed and sees his wife in his bed with a man and then realizes
yeah.
that man is him,
Yeah.
that he's outside of his body. And then, kind of finds a way to get back to the body,
Right.
and then this starts happening over and over again. He would feel these vibrations and then come up out of the
Mm-hmm.
body. And he was trying to figure out why that was happening to him and ended up going to a lot of different friends who were specialists that he could trust.
Right.
That he's wondering, do I have an illness? Am I going crazy? And he's checking by all of these different people. And they're like, no, just explore it, see what this is,
Yeah.
because something's happening, but it's not to do with your health. So
That's
he
so
ruled that out
interesting.
first.
I wonder if I'm just remembering the name of the person wrong. I read a book that was sounds like exactly like that my spiritual coach recommended.
Was Journeys Out of the
Like that's
Body was the
oh,
first
yep,
one.
that's
Oh,
it.
there
Yep.
we go. And then Far Journeys and The Ultimate Journey
Oh,
were the other two
interesting.
books.
Well, I hadn't like looked into any of his later work and like I didn't know that he did sound science and stuff like that. That's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, this was how he ended up exploring it further and then developed the Monroe Institute surrounding that.
Okay. So fascinating. Anything else you want to say about that before I move us to a different topic?
Sure. Yeah, I have a virtual workshop as well, where
Hmm.
I'm combining hemisync, which is the original version of the sounds that Monroe worked on to begin
Hmm.
with. They split companies and that went to Interstate, and then Monroe Institute started developing Monroe Sound Science, but they still work together very closely.
Okay.
So hemisync was the original technology, and I'm using that coupled with law of assumption techniques
Okay.
and
Tell us about that.
building
I don't
that
know what that is.
into so law of assumption it's different from law of attraction. Law of
Okay.
attraction is getting into the frequency of whatever it is that you're trying to draw to you. With law of assumption, it's living in the end. So Neville Goddard brought this forward, and it's basically that you are picturing how it would feel and how it would look to already have the thing that you are manifesting, and
Oh,
you're
yes.
getting into that emotional space and really picturing it. And he liked to have people do that right at the bridge from sleep, like from consciousness into sleep. But that's what hemisync produces. So
Mm,
we can get you there fast
Right.
And then you're able to utilize his techniques within that space and manifest even faster
Wow.
and have a even more efficacy with that. So it's interesting. It's something that I had been playing around with for a while, and then I wanted to share it with people. So I created the course in order to do that. So that's going to be August 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Okay. That sounds fascinating.
And then there's another workshop that the two exploring consciousness workshops and the out of body workshop are all going to be in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Okay.
So those are all live in person. And the only one that's virtual is the manifestation one.
Okay. And we'll link to any of those that still apply when this comes out. I'm curious, this dovetails into the like law of attraction and manifestation that I know you also do a lot of work with. Tell us a little bit more about that. And do you do it with some of this sound science work as well? Or does that work come from a different place or have different, I don't know, container for it?
Yes, so I had studied each of these separately, and HemiSync you can use for a whole bunch of different things. Any application that you have for it, depending upon the focus state that you're using and what your intention is. There are different ways to do any of this, but you can create basically any brainwave state
Mm,
by utilizing that. So, because it was specifically something that was done for manifestation, and the way that it was taught was to get into that sort of alpha bridge to theta state just before you fall asleep. I chose to focus this around focus 10, focus 12, and focus 15. And I chose focus 15 because that's outside of time, and I wanted to do some
mm,
work with timeline shifting. So getting onto and in alignment with the timeline that's for your best and highest good, or the timeline where the experiences that you want to have are. Any way that you want to look at that to bring that about by coming into alignment with that.
yeah. Is that something that you do with people live, like in workshops or in readings, or how do you usually offer that?
In workshops, whether it's live or it's in a virtual Zoom, they're able to stream the audio from me, and
Mhm.
then I'm able to bring them into that state and talk them through it. And then we come back and do a sharing circle with everyone and
Mhm.
have them share their experiences, and also, troubleshoot anything that they might have as far as concerns go about being able to manifest. I also work with people to release any limiting beliefs that they might have that
Mhm.
are coupled with their manifestations that might be hindering them from moving
Yeah.
forward with that. That happens a lot. People thinking that they don't deserve what they're trying to manifest, or having some sort of energetic blockage to getting in the state where they can actually picture having whatever it is that they
Mhm.
are trying to bring forward. So
Yeah.
I work with them to release anything like that before they figure out what it is that they want and really hone in on what it is that they want to bring that about. So we do some clearing work first.
Yeah. Cool. Tell me a little bit about your podcast and your Substack.
Okay, so my podcast we did for one season, I'm bringing it back around the fall, and it will be metaphysics focused. So it will be, mainly people who are doing metaphysics research or are working in the field. And my Substack covers a lot of different aspects. I have a meme drop that comes out every Monday. I have different ways that people can work with me that I send out that way. And I have a daily reading that comes out, a daily collective reading, where it's the same as the personal divination reading, but without being personal. So I
Mhm.
take the energies that are present and I give you a meditation to do based on those energies, and sorting that out and getting the most out of the reading. But so you get the reading, you get the tarot card pulls, you get the shuffles, any clairaudience that came through for me, numerology, the runes, all of that.
Mhm.
So it's all present within the reading. And yeah, that goes out every single day. So the Monday
Yeah.
ones are free, and then if you want them 7 days a week, that's the paid subscriber account.
Yeah. Cool. Also, this is another question that just kind of pinged for me and thinking about all the different kind of sound science things. I've gone through periods where I've listened to different Hertz music and found it really helpful. And I'm curious if you have any favorites or if you ever do that or you do more of the like focus level hemisync kind of things with like different frequencies.
Yeah, usually I'll use Hemisync or Monroe
Mhm.
Sound Science, and the Monroe Sound Science tracks you can find on the Expand app. They came out with
Okay,
an app a few years ago, and it's been updated recently. There are tons of tracks on there,
awesome.
and yeah, and lots of different applications for that. So it's worth checking out, and there's a lot of community surrounding it too. So there are different groups that you can join. I have a Monroe community group on there called MCG Starfire,
Okay.
and we meet up every Wednesday night Central Time, 7 o'clock, and we do a meditation together, and then have a sharing circle after that. So it's from 7 to 9 p.m. Every Wednesday night Central Time. So if you're Eastern Time, it would be 8 to 10.
I mentioned this at the beginning, but I jumped into lots of questions because I was so excited about them. Is there anything you'd like to share about your journey? You were sharing a little bit about like your mom had metaphysical books and like so you grew up with playing with tarot cards and stuff like that, but anything with that or your personal or spiritual growth or anything like that that feels helpful to share?
It just kind of I grew up with five religions in my family, and I didn't want to choose anything. They were hoping that I would choose something, but it felt like taking sides,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to. So I grew up atheist, and no one really liked that.
Yeah. You're like, I'm trying to not like cross any beliefs or take sides, and you're like, nobody liked my side.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was what I picked, and I was a devout atheist for a very long time, and eventually I came across a lot of quantum physics research, and it completely flipped it on a 180 for me.
Oh, tell us about that.
From nothing to all one thing kind of a
Yes.
thing. And I was like, okay, I got that wrong. So I didn't have this big reaction to that because I left myself open to
Mhm.
eventually, any information that came my way, I would
Right.
just integrate that into my knowledge. I didn't
Right.
really, yeah, I wasn't playing for a team.
Right. Yes.
So when that happened, everyone else had a bad reaction to it because they
Mhm.
couldn't set a watch by me anymore.
Right.
So that
Yes.
was interesting to navigate. And then just eventually, because I did have all of that information in my head from reading all those books for ages from my mom, um, I had quite the library of knowledge in my
Mhm.
head about it that I
Mhm.
could pull from without, having studied it to study it. I
Right.
was studying it to debunk it.
Yes.
So it's very interesting how that happened.
Yes.
And the first, even after the first experience that I had that I really recognize as, this type of experience, I still wasn't convinced that this is what was happening to me. But when I was at school at NYU the first time, it was right before the towers fell.
Mm.
And I was having nightmares about buildings falling for months leading up to that. And
Wow.
I graduated right before it happened. So I went home and I was kind of sleeping it off before I had done that. I was seeing
Mhm.
psychologists to talk about my dreams, and she was trying to relate it to everything else but my dreams.
Right.
And,
Right.
and it was like, no, like this is
Right. This is
something
pretty
specific
obvious.
that's
Yes.
happening to
Right.
me, and I don't understand why, and I want to talk about that. And I it's interesting because where I was dorming when I first got to New York was right down the street from the World Trade Center.
Mm.
And every night, just about, my friends and I would go over there. We would grab drinks and sandwiches, and we would
Wow.
go over there and lay down on the ground. There was not like a lot of security there. They didn't care if kids came over and did this. It was not like it is now. We would lay down on the ground and line up our feet with the building in the middle of the night, and it would look like a walkway into space.
Wow.
And we would just lay there and talk to each other and like drink our drinks, have our sandwiches, and hang out, and then go back to the dorms. And I feel like some part of me, like knowing what I know now, communed with the space. I
Right.
had some sort of like,
Yeah, energetic connection to it.
yeah, exactly. And it came forward in that way, and then I didn't know what to do about it or what it
Right.
was or
Yes.
anything like that. So
Yes.
very interesting first experience
Right.
when it
I
comes
wonder
to
if
that.
like first experiences are like that for most people. I mean, I know like
Probably.
I was doing like internal family systems work and was like so used to working with my inner parts. And then all of a sudden I had a part that dropped in one day that I was like, but it's not a part. What is this? And then it like was
Yeah,
like, oh, okay, it's my guide. It's my first guide. Like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, I'm freaking out, you know?
for sure. Yeah, I
Oh,
was lucid dreaming as a kid and had no idea what it was. I was
mm,
having out of body experiences that like I wasn't scared of, but I was just doing it for fun and I didn't know what it
mm,
was. I would just go to the ceiling, go back to the body, go to the ceiling, go back to the just like something fun that, like
right,
I can do this,
right.
like and
Which is like such a kid thing to do, right? Is
yeah,
like, it's a game.
yay, like
I love
I was
that.
just entertaining myself. Like I didn't know what it was or like to be
Oh,
scared of it like an adult would
right,
be or anything. Just
right,
like it's just something I do. So you wouldn't even like there are things that you wouldn't
right.
even be afraid of if you weren't trained to be afraid of it, you know?
Yes, so true. Hmm. Absolutely. Anybody that wants to follow Demi or read her stuff or listen to her podcast or do a reading with her, highly recommend, or do her workshops. I will put all of that information in the show notes for you. And Demi, thank you so much for being here. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you for having me on. This has been
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank
And thank
you.
you, listeners, for being here. And I will see you again next time on The Curious Empath. Thanks for listening to The Curious Empath. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe and share this with a friend. And also, please leave a review about how you enjoyed our podcast today. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you again next time on The Curious Empath.